Got it. Welcome to our overview presentation of the Community Opportunity Readiness Program. I'd like to acknowledge that I am joining you today from my home on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. Also on the call today, I have some of my colleagues. I see we have Dawn Potter, who is another Economic Development Officer, who's also on the call. Just checking to see. We also have Joshua de Guzman also on the call. He's another Economic Development Officer for the North, and Dawn is the Economic Development for the Coast. We have, well, Philip Lee is not on the call yet, but he will be joining us a little bit later. We have Stephanie Stewart also on the call, is one of our colleagues, and Tyler Fong. So the presentation itself is going to be about, I would say, maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then really the rest of the time is an opportunity to have questions and answers. And you can put your questions into the chat box as I'm going through my presentation, and one of my colleagues can answer them as I go through the presentation, or I can just wait till the end of the presentation. I'm just trying to go next slide here, figuring out how to do this. Okay. So I'll start by talking a bit about what is Corp. So Corp is project-based funding to support First Nations, Inuit communities, tribal councils in the pursuit of economic opportunities. Corp supports opportunities with the potential of generating incremental community economic benefits. That includes employment, business revenues from sales, and leasing revenues. Oh, let me go back one, sorry. There we go. Okay. So first I'll talk a bit about the eligibility for the program and some of the assessment criteria that we use to assess projects. So first, is the recipient eligible? So eligible recipients are First Nations, tribal councils. Also, an economic development corporation can apply on behalf of the First Nation. And then in terms of an eligible project, we'll talk a bit more about that on the next slide, as well as, are the expenditures eligible? So when submitting an application, there is a section that talks a bit about what type of expenditures you're seeking funding for. So there's a full list of eligible and ineligible expenditures that is on our Corp website. So you could go there for a more detailed list on what is eligible under Corp. Also, is the project supported through a community plan? So we do require that any project that goes through Corp has support from the community. So that could be either through a land use plan, a CCP, a comprehensive community plan. It could be an economic development plan. Applicant contribution must meet the minimum requirements, and we will go through that in more detail as well in this presentation. We also require that for community-owned businesses that it is 51% owned by the First Nation or tribal council or a collective. We also require that reporting is in good standing. So that's past reporting from either a previous Corp project, as well as our other programs, such as the LEDSP program. Application is complete and supporting documents have been provided, and we'll go through that also in more detail later on and what is required as part of the supporting documents. We also require that land tenure and environmental requirements have been met. So a project can either be on reserve or it could be off reserve on land owned by the band, such as fee simple land. And it could also be on, say, Crown land with a long-term lease agreement. And then, does the project meet shovel-ready criteria? And this is specific to projects that are shovel-ready over 250,000, and we'll go into more detail with that as well. So what is an eligible project? So an eligible project must demonstrate that it has a potential of generating long-term incremental community economic benefits. Again, this is business revenues, leasing revenues, employment. Some examples of ineligible projects are typically social enterprises, not-for-profits, projects that do not meet a 5-to-1 ratio. So that 5-to-1 ratio is really assessing what are the total project costs, what are the total economic benefits, and if the project costs are much higher than the benefits, it may not meet that 5-to-1 ratio. Projects that do not generate a new source of revenue. So if, say, an economic development corporation has office space and they want to expand their office space, that's not really bringing in new leasing revenue, so that wouldn't be considered an eligible project. As well as food security projects and a utility business that collects user fees. So there are two processes for Corp. So we have our Corp regional process. So that is a call out that the BC region sends out, usually in January with a due date of March. That is for projects that are up to 250,000. And that for that process, we support up to 80% of eligible project costs. So this is typically planning costs and design costs for an eligible project. Then we have our national process called Corp PF, and that process runs October. We just actually did the call out for that. So we sent out, I think with the last few days or last week, a call out for the Corp PF. And that runs till about January. Applications are due early December, but all of the shovel-ready criteria has to be completed by usually end of January. And this is for shovel-ready projects over 250,000. So this includes economic infrastructure projects, as well as equity gap projects. And so for infrastructure projects, the maximum amount of funding you can apply for is $3 million, and that's up to 66.67% of eligible costs. For an equity gap project, which is a community-owned business, if it's a new business, a startup business, you can apply for up to 40% of costs. And if it's an acquisition or expansion, up to 30% of costs. So this slide is just showing the intake process. So we start with our call for proposals. Then there's a few weeks for the project pre-screening. So right after we do the call out, we do suggest that you get in touch with us if you're intending to apply so that we can do a pre-screening. So this will help ensure that you're not filling out an application for a project that isn't eligible. So you can meet with one of the economic development officers to go through your project to see if it is eligible and if it meets the shovel-ready criteria. Then we have our application due date, and applications are then submitted with all of the supporting documents. And then there's it can take maybe four to 6 weeks for the ISK project review and ranking period. So this is where we have to go through all of the applications. So depending on how many applications received will depend on how long this process might take for us. And then we will send out project notifications of project approval. Okay, so there's really two kind of main streams that I wanted to just touch on. So we have the community-owned businesses. So there's one sort of process for community-owned businesses. So that could be a single community-owned business or interrelated businesses. So so for that, you can apply to the regional process for, again, up to 250,000 for the planning costs. So that includes things such as a feasibility study, a business plan, architectural design. And then once it's completely ready for construction, you would apply through the equity gap stream. So that would be projects over 250,000. And that's for construction and startup costs for a community-owned business. Then we have the economic opportunities stream, which is not related to a specific eligible business. So that would mean it has multiple business opportunities. So that could be, for an example, would be a business park or an industrial park, office building. So projects up to 250,000. Again, this would have to go through our regional process, but we can fund a lot of the planning pieces required to get to that construction readiness. So that includes environmental work, design cost, other planning costs. And then once that's shovel ready, that project would apply for economic infrastructure through our national process. So community-owned businesses, again, have to go through that equity gap process if they're intended to apply to this the Corp program. So a community-owned business is, again, a single business or several interrelated businesses, and that the business concept must be supported by members in a community planning document. So here's some of the requirements when applying for equity gap funding through the national process. So once it's shovel ready. So you need to have a confirmation of all sources of project funding. So the program does require 10% cash contribution. So we would ask for either a BCR or a letter of confirmation if it's coming from the Economic Development Corporation that there is a cash contribution, a commitment to the cash contribution. If there's other grants, partner funding, financing, all of those sources of funding, we need to see a confirmation that there is a commitment there. That includes financing a commercial loan for a minimum of 40% of project costs. So that is specifically for community-owned businesses under the equity gap. Again, I mentioned we also need to see proof of 51% ownership if it's a partnership project, interest in a limited company or a limited partnership, completed certified business valuations if it's an acquisition project. We also need to see financial statements for at least 3 years for expansion projects. And if it is a startup business, we also need to see completed business plan, market sensitivity analysis as well. So economic infrastructure projects, this is again for multiple businesses. So some key things to highlight is it's again supported by members in a community planning document. It can demonstrate long-term economic opportunity, supports multiple business opportunities. Often we see this through leasing revenue. You do need to secure a long-term tenant, but having multiple tenants is always helpful to have, even a letter of interest or letter of intent from other tenants as well. Applicant must meet all Corp shovel-ready criteria and be tender-ready. And again, maximum contribution amount is $3 million, up to 66.67% of eligible costs. This includes any funding received through the regional process for the same project. So I mentioned that you can apply to the regional program for those planning costs. say a project receives 250,000 from the regional process and they're now applying to the national project process, that 250,000 would be deducted from the 3 million. So for community economic infrastructure project, this diagram is just showing the various stages. So year one is typically the planning stage. You can apply to the regional process for this stage to do feasibility studies, environmental, archaeological, and geotechnical assessments, and those just for as an example. And then during the design stage, you can also again apply to the regional for things such as permits, servicing agreements, engineering designs, and cost estimates. And during this time, you may be doing some marketing in order to secure anchor tenants. So that's also something that would happen over the course of year one to year three. And then finally, the project is construction ready, and that would go through the national process. So here I have a list of the shovel-ready criteria for community economic infrastructure projects. So must demonstrate long-term economic opportunity, confirmation of an anchor tenant. So having a lease agreement in place or having letters of interest from other tenants. Again, having confirmation of all sources of project funding, ensuring proof of land tenure. So ownership of a land designation if it's on reserve, or zoning if it's off reserve. Proof of our completed environmental impact assessments and ISC environmental screening decisions. Those are specifically for projects that are on reserve. Copies of required regulatory approvals, copies of servicing agreements, construction permit, tendering package, cost estimates, stamped engineered, issued for construction drawings, and a construction schedule. So depending on the type of project, some projects we would refer you to some of the other initiatives other government departments have. So there are, and I'll just see if Phil's on the line here, because if he was available, he was going to talk a little bit more in depth about these. Is Phil on the call yet?
No, he's not.
No, okay. Well, so I'll try to go through these. So agriculture, food systems. So that's an initiative that is specific to agriculture and food security type projects. So we would refer you to look at that if you had that type of project. We also have the Clean Energy New Relationship Trust BC Indigenous Clean Energy Initiative for clean energy projects. Any kind of fishery projects. There is the Aquaculture and Fisheries Department of Fisheries and Ocean Pacific Integrated Commercial Fisheries Initiative. For projects related to technology, there's the Pacific Economic Development Canada. And then any kind of skills training projects we would refer you to the Employment Skills Development Canada for the Indigenous Skills Employment Training Initiative. So the Aboriginal Financial Institutes also offer funding for planning costs. So if it is a community-owned business or a single business, you can also apply for up to 250,000 through an Aboriginal Financial Institute. So while we typically only have one call out per year, they actually do more regular intake throughout the year. So you can apply through their websites at any time. So project pre-screening. So we mentioned that if you are intending to apply to Corp, we do ask that you get in touch with your economic development officer, and we can set up a 30-minute call just to discuss the project, go through the checklist, and just make sure that everything is ready to go when for the due date, for the application due date, or if it's not eligible, they don't need to go through that process. And these are the 3 economic development officers, their contact information, and which area is in their portfolio. So I can go to the next one. Okay, so we do have another webinar that is focused on the shovel-ready requirements. So that presentation on November 4th is going to go through the shovel-ready criteria in much more detail than I just did, as well as answer any questions about that shovel-ready checklist. So do encourage you to also attend that webinar. And that concludes the presentation. So I just open it up for questions now.
So Vanessa, there was some questions that came up. Okay. I did answer a few of them. So, and also I'm just double checking our time there for the next presentation. Is it 1 p.m. or 10 a.m. for the one on the 4th? For some reason I thought it was 10 a.m. I might be wrong.
Oh,
no, it's actually 1 p.m.
Okay, so everyone scratch what I said there about 10 a.m. It's 1 p.m. Good to know that I know the time. I'm the one doing the presentation. Yeah. But the questions were, what was the first one here? Do the first 2 stages count against a $3 million cap or maximum? And I responded, yes, the regional program funding does count against a $3 million cap for economic infrastructure and $1 million equity cap, or the equity gap cap. So, and then another question. Yeah, does a project need to meet all these criteria? I think we're talking about the shovel-ready criteria to proceed, and I just wanted to verify that just for the national program. So our regional program, if you haven't gotten to that shovel-ready requirement, that's what the regional program is for, to get you there, especially for equity or for economic infrastructure projects. That's when you can do those development type activities to get yourself to that shovel-ready stage. Oh, and Dexter has another question here. No, so yes, so yeah, the shovel-ready is for the one that we just sent out for the Corp PF. So those projects need to be shovel-ready to be considered. If you're looking for more development projects, you're looking at the regional program, and we're going to be sending that call out in January. You're welcome.
Looks like Sylvia Andrews has her hand up. A question.
Yeah, go ahead, Sylvia.
Hi, Vanessa. Hi, Don.
Hello.
How are you guys?
Hi, good. Nice to see you, Sylvia.
Good. So we just hired a new economic director, and he's not quite up to speed yet. So do you mind if I can get a copy of this presentation that you just went through? I was a little late getting on, so.
I think it's also recorded, is that right?
Yeah, we've also recorded it.
Yeah. It is recorded. We'll post it on the Can-Do website. But yes, Vanessa will send me a PDF of this presentation, and I'll fire it off to everybody this afternoon who attended this session.
Awesome. Thanks.
No problem.
Any other questions? Hands up or type it in the chat.
Diane saying thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I guess we can wrap it up. Otherwise, again, if you want to get in touch with one of the officers, and we can certainly discuss more in detail a specific project that you have in mind.
And Vanessa, I just wanted to let you know that Phil did join. If there is anything at all that you needed him to add, he is on in the meeting right now.
Oh, we do have a question that just came up. What is the latest date to apply? So Trevor, I'm assuming we're talking about the Corp PF. We actually haven't, we just sent out kind of an initial call from the region, because we haven't had the official call from the national program. So we actually don't have that date yet. We just didn't want to give everyone only a month or less than that to get everything ready. So we just sent out kind of more of a tentative kind of call out just to get the ball rolling, but we don't actually have a due date right now for the application, like a hard one. It's normally early December.
Yeah, the early December. So last year it was, I believe, December 3rd or December 4th. So could possibly expect the same, around the same time. But once we get that official call from the headquarters, we can send that out with the dates.
Oh, it looks like we have another question here from Terry. Will this funding be reoccurring? So this program, knock on wood, has been going on for quite a few years. So it is a reoccurring an annual program where we receive the money. Obviously, it has something. It's to do with the budgets and all that sort of thing. But at this point, it's supported. So I'd assume that the program would be going on for at least a few more years, but it has been going on for, I don't know, about 10 years now, Vanessa?
Yeah.
Oh, and I don't know, Terry, what you mean there by Corp shovel ready in particular. So I think you mean the Corp PF, the national program. Oh, another. Okay. Oh, yeah. Dexter's going to call you soon there.
Okay. Can I ask a question? I don't know how to get those little hands to show up.
I see your hand. Go ahead.
I work with a First Nations group, and we're pursuing a digital project that it's not, I guess you wouldn't necessarily use the word shovel ready, because there probably won't be any shovel except for content. And I wondered whether something that, and it's a commercial project, it will create new job opportunities, and it will be ongoing, hopefully. And I just wanted to know if there's any restrictions on the type of business that falls within the criteria of this project, of this particular program. Like it's if we do something in like for television, or for something that's covered in some ways in other departments of government, but this is one where we would be doing it in an unexpected place, and would be creating about 180 to 250 jobs as part of it. And I'm just wondering, if it, and it'll be shovel ready, if we use that term broadly, certainly by January, with the funding, and the only gap being from you guys potentially. And I wonder if that kind of thing would qualify, or if it's kind of too outside of what your normal focus is.
Oh, that's definitely outside of what we normally do, but I wouldn't want to necessarily say no off the bat. I think that kind of project, because it isn't what a typical acquisition, startup, that sort of thing. I think you'd have to have that secondary conversation to get more information. Which nation are you working with? Because then you'd know which economic development officer to talk to.
Yeah, it's under Joshua de Guzman's group, and he's already contacted them, and we will be doing some kind of follow-up with him.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, because it's really, I think with those types of projects, it's really to do with, well, two things. because if it's an equity gap project, you have to prove that the funding's not somewhere else, right? There's not other sources of funding available to you. And also you have to prove that the funding that would be coming out of the program, you get that 5-to-1 ratio in returns. So
yeah,
it definitely wouldn't be the normal project we do. So it wouldn't be under the normal situation there, but doesn't necessarily mean, I don't think it means it's not eligible. So that's where that secondary conversation and just getting more information about the project, that's where that would
thank you.
help.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you do have like a business plan already, it might be helpful to share that with us as well. We have a question about can you submit more than one project at a time? So no, we do ask that you only submit one project at a time, just as we do have a high demand of applications usually. So we would ask for at least just one for the national, but you can also apply for a different project for regional. So we have those two separate processes. So one project for each is fine, but not two for the same process. Any other questions or no? All right.
I have a question.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Trevor.
I'm doing some work up around Fort St. John, and wondering who should be present in the 30-minute pre-screening meeting. What should it should be a group, like a project team, like say the First Nation, the owner, the consultant.
I'd say no. I'd say the project lead from the nation should be the first person. We wouldn't do that with just the consultant for sure. It would have to be the project lead from the nation because there would be there'd be some information. We're talking specifically about the nation. And it's a little too early to get the whole project team together. It's just that person from the nation who's leading the project, pretty well the person that put the application in.
They would be the ones to kick it off.
Yeah,
but sure. Because of the shortness of the application period, the design team would have to be probably quickly involved.
Yeah,
so that would be the follow-up from that initial meeting for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the 30-minute or the 30-minute discussions. I don't know if it's always going to be able to keep 30 minutes, but really we do have a checklist of things that we would cover through that meeting. So we could always send that in advance and you can just ensure that the appropriate people can answer those questions or on the call.
Okay, thank you.
So we give people a couple more minutes or?
Sounds like might be it.
Might be it, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you have our contact information if you think of anything after this call. So feel free to reach out to us.
Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for attending, and we'll follow up with an email with the PowerPoint presentation. And have a great afternoon, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.